Hello everybody, welcome to the hottest day of the year in the UK, possibly the hottest day on record in this country ever. At the moment at 11:28 AM on the 18th of July 2022, it is 31 degrees outside, feels like 36, which is the highest temperature it was yesterday, and it's set to possibly get another 10 degrees hotter over the course of the day. Now, I hope you appreciate I've put on a vest for this, even some underpants. That's how much I respect you. And I've turned the fan off so you can hear me properly. It's a bit echo in here, always is, but with the fan on, you wouldn't be able to hear anything I'm saying whatsoever. Now, it's clearly getting warmer. Our climate is changing, almost like there should be an expression to express that changing climate. And, you know, logically, there are two responses to it being very hot today. Number one, it's because of climate change. All the science and data backs up this scenario. Or number two is nothing to worry about, it's just hot weather, it's summer for fuck's sake, grow up. In this video I'll be responding to the latter people out there who, various grifters and climate change deniers who tweet about the hot weather, and I'll be showing two short clips from a previous video I made in November last year about climate change. More on that in a minute. First of all, let's go and see a tweet from Julia Hartley Brewer today. She says some schools will close at noon today because of the heat. Unless you are properly ill or there is a tornado, you go to school, full stop. All right. Remember, these are people who freak out about pronouns and Greta Thunberg existing, right? These are the same people calling children snowflakes in 41-degree weather. I've been saying all weekend that literally every news organisation is saying there'll be thousands of deaths on the hottest day of the year, and why on earth would anti-vax weirdos and people like that take this to mean it's a nanny state? Why are you controlling my life? Go ahead, mate, go ahead. If you really are that annoyed by this all, go outside right now, stand around in the 41-degree heat when it hits that part of the thermometer, stand around for about an hour and see how you do. Anyway, going back to that point I just made, it's like anti-vaxxers are still around, desperate to find something else to complain about. The vaccine and the lockdowns were purely to stop the NHS from being overwhelmed and to save a few lives here and there, you know, and advice, not orders or commands, about staying safe in the heat is purely to stop the NHS getting overwhelmed once again. But absolute wankers say it's a nanny state. There was literally a report out about 2 or 3 days ago about ambulances waiting times and how they've increased massively over the years, and ambulances are currently full of sick people waiting outside hospitals for about 11 hours is the maximum time before a patient can be seen by the people within the hospital. Why would you want that to be worse than it already is, grifters? That's my question to you. This has been going around social media for the last few days, and I must say this has been largely quite effective for the grifters and the climate change deniers, okay? Left, old school weather forecast, happy and sunshiny. Right, new style weather forecast designed to look like fear and destruction. It's called summer, deal with it. Now it turns out this guy here, Aidan McGivern, a Met Office meteorologist, has said, I've seen this ridiculous comparison a lot on social media during the last few days. I created the Met Office temperature colour scale with help from a colleague. That's why I know the image on the right is doctored. Met Office graphics are not designed to cause fear. And there's a little thread, 8 tweets, about how it's changed over the years to reflect literally climate change. And surprise, surprise, he says he never thought, even as a meteorologist, that we'll be having 40-degree summers this early. Hence, you know, he was surprised having to use some red colours on the map. Lots of grifters saying, oh, it's scary, look at the difference between these two maps, not noticing that one of them is clearly fake. One is more scary than the other, without addressing why it might be more scary. Oh, by the way, here's GB News' weather map. When I post this image as a reply to climate change deniers, they suddenly go silent. In the past, Fred the weatherman, and this is a joke for slightly older people watching this now who are British. In the past, Fred the weatherman used to nonce kids. In the present, he doesn't do that anymore, right? How about you focus on the positives of weather forecasting rather than your anti-net zero propaganda, guys? Just for once, please. Well, it's only 41 degrees. It's not proof that climate change exists. Well, I hope you don't have babies or kids or dogs, cats, or any kind of pet, a nan, maybe a granddad, or any need to drive anywhere if you've got a car that hasn't got really powerful air conditioning, or any need to leave your house, because the heat will fuck with all of those things. Just as I said earlier, stand outside in the direct heat for an hour, I dare you, and then get back to me. That's all you gotta do. Well, it's 45 degrees in Spain, and they seem to cope every single year, don't they? Well, Spain is actually experiencing the second heat wave of the summer, and everything is on fire. So no, they're not coping at all. To ignore a hot country, a naturally hot country, having a different climate from ours, right? Number one, and people who have adapted to all but the extreme heat, is disingenuous and fucking stupid at the same time. Yesterday, I was sat in the shade in the back garden, in the shade, okay, and it was 30 degrees, right? And it was uncomfortable. I was like, I can stay out here for about 30 minutes, half an hour, but I've got to go back inside the house where it's a bit cooler, downstairs. And then I thought, well, actually, tomorrow it's going to be 10 degrees. And I was like, how do you explain to climate change deniers about climate change? And I thought, well, within 24 hours, it's going to be 10 degrees warmer. If you're a climate change denier watching this, let's up the ante slightly, okay? Why don't you go and sit in a car right now? Not one that's in the shade, one that's out in the sun, windows rolled all the way up, or electric, because it's the 90s, right? And then just sit in there for, let's say, 3, 4, 5 minutes maximum. Just sit in there for 5 minutes and tell me how uncomfortable it is afterwards. You know, would you like to stay in there for any longer? Because that's what it's going to be like in a decade or 2 or 3, but all day long for a prolonged period of time, for days on end. Anyway, let's take a break from Grifters and show the first clip from 10 brand new ways to combat climate change, something I made in November last year to coincide with COP26, the climate change conference where fuck all happened to address climate change. And I show in this video how organisations like Extinction Rebellion can highlight little known impacts of climate change and how they can protest these issues on a wider scale. Just things that people don't know about normally but should have a big impact if only people knew. So here's arguably the most important part from that video. I'll let you decide. So we hear about crops failing across the world. Recently there was a lot of problems in Canada because of a summer that was so hot. Basically they run out of pasta. A disastrous growing season in Canada that has seen record temperatures and subsequent droughts, plus a cold springtime in Italy affecting the quality and quantity of Italian wheat, means that the two major suppliers of pasta are running very low indeed. And it's us consumers that are likely to pay more for pasta in the future as we foot the bill for rising wheat prices. You'll see from my suggestions that a lot of climate activists are aware of these problems, but don't focus on the specific parts of these problems that really would get people's attention. So, crops failing and there being less pasta, that's pretty bad, but something we can just about live with. Crops fail and there's maybe less wheat and barley, well, there's a little bit less bread in the world. It's becoming more serious. But what about the ingredients to make a certain product that grow in fields that people will miss quite dearly? For example, the ingredients to make beer. So far, the media have mostly focused on the taste of beer changing for the worse in the future and the potential for beer prices to rise in the future too. Both of these outcomes are due to the harvesting of hops being affected by increased rainfall, which of course is due to climate change. But Forbes.com write that in modelling the impact of the most severe climate-related events, a study suggests the amount of beer drunk would fall by 16% globally. In the UK alone, beer consumption will fall by 1.33 billion litres, with prices doubling as a result of barley losses. If protesters simply said, in the future, due to climate change, booze could become a thing of the past, and then back up that prediction with stats and facts and looking at the evidence involved, then my God, people will start to lose their shit almost immediately. And the protest part of this is possibly not exactly protesting outside breweries and distribution places for booze, lager, cider, etc. No, in fact, I think you should do something slightly different. And with permission, you should arrange a piss up in a brewery. Like one big massive party that all the media is invited to. Lay it on thick. Give them free booze, which of course you pay for in advance. Get everyone a bit merry, but also make them aware of the situation. You can have a rave at the end, you can have a little dance, you can have a band there or something similar, but ultimately, as long as you get the message across before people are really pissed, and then you have a good old drink up afterwards. Now, there are different types of grifters out there as well. There's people who say, such as Andy Mayer, no, I've never heard of him either, as heatwave hysteria. Remember that it's only the grifters who are causing the hysteria here. Everyone else is just saying, you know, sit in the shade at least, or stay inside, close the curtains. As heatwave hysteria grips Britain, it's worth remembering that we, a massively, about 75 times, okay, this isn't great English. As heatwave hysteria grips Britain, it's worth remembering that we are more exposed to excess deaths from cold than heat. Okay, can we address the heat bit first? It's quite important. It's 41 degrees out there in some places. It's got a little map here of how many people die in cold compared to heat. There's no real sources or anything, but let's not worry about that. So here's my response to people saying, oh, more people die of the cold than of the heat, right? If that's the case, and you're suddenly worried about all these people dying of the cold, which you've just mentioned now, right? Why are you still promoting on that basis? Why are you still promoting an anti-net zero stance? Because a reliance on gas and other fossil fuels, right, means that's how we heat the majority of homes, right? And that is unaffordable for millions of people come this winter, if not already, right? So surely it's time for a change in that scenario. Maybe, I don't know, some other type of energy. I can't think of any other ways to do it though. That's a shame, isn't it? I mean, a lot of people are paid, a lot of grifters are paid by fossil fuel companies to promote fossil fuels. Literally, Alex Epstein is a clear example there, but your Darren Grimes and all these kind of people, they clearly have getting a bit of money from these people, right? And if you insist on supporting the fossil fuel industry, then you should at the same time be doing all you can to influence the government to do more to help people pay their energy bills. So far, the only person with an online presence who does this is Martin Lewis, the money saving expert, and he's not political at all, he's apolitical, right? But there's not a single grifter out there saying, look, I insist that you give poor people more money to pay their energy bills. The poor people that I pretend to care about. Or maybe, just maybe, all cold people in the winter are just massive snowflakes. Yeah, despite pointing out the greater numbers of deaths in the winter, maybe that's actually meaningless and they should all just toughen up, the big massive crybabies. I mean, you need to really find a narrative if you're going to go with that one, okay? Now, we're going to end with the last clip from the video I mentioned earlier. You can watch it on my channel. The links will be below, and at the end of this video, it will flash up on your screen as well. This is a very important clip because this is a thing that grifters never mention about climate change. The anti-immigration types, their entire grift is based on this theory coming up, and I've linked it to climate change. Some of you will be there already in your heads, but trust me, I'll say no more and I'll just show the video for you. But for everyone else, thank you very much for watching. I hope this has been quite enlightening or interesting and entertaining. If you've liked this and you want to see more like this, just simply subscribe and do share this video on social media, because it's a very small channel with a very small reach, so I can use all the help I can get. And if for some reason you are well off and you want to help me financially in the cost of living crisis, I've got edgy bills to pay too, and you want to pop $1 or $2 in my PayPal account, I'll be very grateful indeed. No one ever does, but it's always worth asking, just in case, you know. Otherwise, you can join my Patreon if you want, because there's some exclusive bonus content over there which you might be interested in. And that's it. I'm rambling now, so thank you very much for watching. I'll leave you with this clip. See you later. So, for my penultimate suggestion, I once again have to say, know your audience. It's something that environmental activists time and time again get wrong. You have to know your audience. And what do the audience in the UK know? We have just had this thing called Brexit. And sadly, a lot of people voted for Brexit because they don't like immigrants. A lot of them wanted a lot of Eastern Europeans to just get out of the country. They wanted British people to have British jobs and so forth. I mean, clearly it's not worked out how they liked, because all of our shelves are empty and there's no one to drive our trucks. But I'm trying to not make this too political. What I'm saying is that people in this country, whether you like it or not, there's no way to sugarcoat this, have a deep-seated hatred of people from outside of this country. So, know your audience. You know that they're scared of this particular thing, so use that to your advantage. It's abundantly clear that as the world heats up, people will migrate from one part of the world to another. It's very easy to argue that all these migrants will eventually go to the big cities in the Western world. Very similar to when Syria had an exodus of refugees coming into Europe, there were people who were very scared by the images of people en masse crossing by foot across a huge continent. And what you've got to make people aware is this is going to happen more regularly and in greater numbers. By using facts and statistics, you can show them using numbers how bad it's going to get, and then you can demonstrate how bad it's going to get. And any suggestion I'll make in the next few seconds is just purely for entertainment purposes for this video. But we've seen how Extinction Rebellion can shut down somewhere like Oxford Street, the shopping district in London, for a couple of days. I'm just saying that if you mocked up a scenario of migrants invading an area, then maybe it might make a few headlines and make people aware of the situation. How to do that is more difficult than simply the idea itself. I think that if I was in the position of an activist, I would certainly get a lot of people involved, dress them in sort of migrant style clothing, maybe a fair amount of rags, make them look quite dirty, and maybe cover their faces in shawls or maybe religious attire, because that's another thing that people are scared of in this country for some reason. And you get lots and lots of people involved, shitloads of people involved. And whilst you're doing that, you could also bring along some, let's say, very heavy lead mannequins, some statues, some kind of human shaped objects which are almost immovable, especially if they have, say, a concrete base, and you deliver them on a big truck which has a big winch that can put them in certain areas and make them hard to move. And so basically, when there isn't a real human dressed as a migrant, there is a fake human dressed as a migrant taking up some space and being even harder to move than an actual human. I wouldn't endorse saying that an area such as Bank in London, if that entire area around the tube station was filled up with people and heavy to move statues dressed as migrants, possibly fenced in, because you have to put these migrants somewhere and it's normally behind a fence. That fence could double up as protection for the migrants, both real and fake, from members of the public who might be angered by their protest. And these little camps, let's call them, can have lots of banners around them, set up very easily, maybe speaker systems, big screens, maybe some images can be projected onto the buildings behind them by organisations such as the activist organisation led by donkeys that I mentioned earlier. Maybe take a different route and have all these fake migrants gathered together safely and then have a massive rave for days and days and days on end. With the idea being, yes, these fake migrants are quite distracting and do make a lot of fuss and a lot of noise, but is that better or worse than there being a real invasion of people because of climate change? Yes, I know, using far-right terms like invasion probably are not a good idea, but it's just getting my point across in this video. Do you understand?